Hello, YouTube. It's been a while. Um, so, this video is going to be about quite a few subjects, maybe kind of rant video, I don't know. First and foremost, the two most important things anybody should endeavor to know as part of the truth of their existence as an American is the Constitution of the United States of America, the Declaration of Independence, and the Bible. With these things, you can form a foundation for the knowledge that you need to defend your rights in court, in the public, in corporations, in businesses, whatever. You need these things to understand and preserve your rights. Without them, you don't have your rights. And the reason for that is you are endowed by your Creator with certain unalienable rights. If you fail to acknowledge the Creator or don't believe in one, then they become civil rights, rights granted by government and can be removed. And rights that are granted aren't rights in definition at all, but rather privileges, because a privilege is something that can be taken away. A right is something that can't. So you trade in rights for privileges, and we all do this. For instance, we trade in our right to travel for our privilege to drive. We trade in our right to own firearms and to do with them as we please for our privilege of possessing a firearm. We do this all the time with the privilege of having a job. And to show that we have the privilege, we pay the government a tax for the privilege to work, even though it's supposed to be our work. I mean, we're literally, our sweat, our blood is going into the job, but they're getting a cut, doing absolutely nothing except promising future returns. The government is evil. The governments always are evil. It's a undeniable philosophical and scientific fact. You cannot have a party control another party without inherent evil, because ultimately if the first party that controls the second becomes too large or too abusive, then they become not theoretically evil but actually evil. And that's what our government is now. By comparison, we're still probably the freest nation on earth. We do have a lot of freedoms, but there are other nations with more freedom than us. There are other nations that do things better than us. Unfortunately, the liberal mind, and liberals shouldn't be singled out here because Republicans are guilty of this too, the singular mindset of this is my party, this is my platform, this is what I believe, therefore. So I've met Republicans who believe drug dealers should be locked up and drug users, if they overdose, so what? And who cares? Throw them in jail too, because that's what they deserve. Whereas liberals are far more liberal in the amount of freedom they grant people like that. Now, unfortunately, if you're looking at things from a constitutional perspective, the role of drugs is not in the forte of government, nor the distribution or sale of them. And to legalize these things would be a far more beneficial course of action. And for proof of that, just look at Portugal. See, everything that I personally believe, I don't believe anything because somebody tells me. I don't believe anything because somebody's influencing me. I believe everything I believe because I've researched it out to its absolute end, as far as I can go, humanly possible to go in a subject. So when it comes to drug research, I realize that most of the drugs that are illegal are equal to or worse than the drugs that are legal. So alcohol, tobacco, and nicotine are on par or worse than heroin, methamphetamine, cocaine, and other drugs, especially marijuana, LSD, Molly, and mushrooms, and peyote. So the drugs that and people are like, well, the effects are wildly, well, yes, the effects are different. We won't debate that. But the addiction, reciprocity, and the amount of pure usage is extraordinary by comparison. For instance, the active dose to lethal dose of alcohol is 1 to 10. So one active dose, you need 10 doses of the active dose to kill you, to reach the LD 50 or the lethal dose 50% of the time. For instance, and for another example, marijuana is over 1 in 4,000. I'm not sure if they really know exactly. I think it was said once that you need to smoke 12 pounds of medical grade marijuana inside of 15 minutes or 15 pounds inside of 12 minutes, one of the two. And I don't know anybody alive who could do that. Good luck with that to try to reach it 50% of the time. I mean, even 12 pounds, even that's ridiculous. So, and LSD is equally hard to overdose on. I think somebody took like several thousands and thousands of dosage in a syringe or something to overdose. So it's hard to overdose on that. Same thing with ecstasy or Molly. Specifically Molly, because ecstasy is a drug that's cut with other drugs. And see, the problem with drugs is if you prohibit people from using them, there are people that will literally use them because you prohibit them. And there are people that won't try them that will end up trying them later when they're not physically able to handle them as well. There are all number of reasons, and there's the money pit that it is as well. You're spending how many millions, billions of dollars a year for prohibition of these drugs that you have no constitutional right to prohibit in the first place. There is no constitutional provision granting the authority to the federal or state government to go in and tell us what we can and can't imbibe and what food we can and cannot eat. Government has no authority there. See, freedom means the ability to do and say anything you want. Liberty is the ability to do and say what you ought to. Very, very important definitions that we have forgotten. So if we are to preserve our Constitution, preserve our rights, we need to know what our rights are. And we need to start exercising those rights and asserting them in courts of law. So pick your battle, find your arguments, and do your best to get ready and fight legally and permissibly to end these usurpations of our God-given rights. Because we've been brainwashed. It's so hard to say God-given unalienable right because it's a civil right, it's a constitutional right, it's a whatever right, natural right. But we don't get taught what we need to get taught. The most important books in the Constitution, if you took two, the Constitution, the Bible, two documents, and these two form the framework for our entire nation. Now, the Declaration of Independence is very important as well. You need that to understand the framework. And there is nothing wrong with the Constitution. People say, well, there's words about Indians. They call them savages or Injuns or whatever. Who cares? At one point, the term Negro was an acceptable term instead of the vernacular today, African American or black. Terms change. Opinions change. But what we always need to remember is sticks and stones may break my bones, but names can never hurt me. Psychologists say this isn't true. That's because they're lying sacks of poop. They go around and they have some of the worst health statistics of any demographic besides regular caretakers in the hospital fields. I don't know why anybody trusts a medical professional over their own common sense. It's beyond me why anybody would let a head shrink in their head, because this is the type of person that without any evidence, any experiment, any science whatsoever can tell you there's something wrong with you and then prescribe you a drug to fix what they perceive to be wrong with you. It is completely and utterly non-objective and completely subjective to the whim of whatever psychiatrist you're seeing or doctor. I mean, I've experienced it firsthand. I went in with a burnt finger and said it barely hurts. He says all you gotta do is wash it with soap and water. It'll be fine in a couple days. Here's a prescription for hydrocodone. What do I need this for? Lawyers, if we don't prescribe it and you need it, you can get sued. Something like that. Something involving lawyers and law. So our government, our medical system, they're all undermining our Constitution, our mental, physical health. I mean, we ourselves aren't doing our due diligence and demanding our Constitution be respected. When I sit down and I research the world, I find out Newfoundland has better test scores because they test before, they don't have test scores rather, they test before they teach to find out what you need to learn so they can teach you. Instead of the United States, which teaches you to memorize stuff so you can pass the test. This tests you to see what you need to learn and simply teaches you from the test instead of to test. And it's a much better system. The system we have now for education sucks. Anybody who disagrees with this, I'm sorry, but I would really like to see some evidence, because the dropout rates are high, and they keep getting worse. People aren't completing their education. We're having people that literally cannot make it. And that's the education system's fault, because they designed it for book learners who are left-brained. I believe that's correct. The dominant side of the brain responsible for logic, science, very methodical, repetitive type brain, math, science type of brain, as opposed to art, crafts type of brain, and very abstract thinking, creative thinking. So I'm a left brain type, Without Adderall, I wouldn't be able to adapt to the system. So they drugged me in order for me to be educated. But unfortunately, when they did that, they basically turned one, like most humans have one side or the other of the brain active. I have nowhere to verify this, but I'm still artistic, but I'm also the left brain side. So I've got, I don't know what the drugs do, but they basically activated, at least for a time, my left brain and my right brain was still active. So I was learning, and when I wasn't on the medication, I was doodling in the origins of my pages. But I was learning the way they wanted me to learn, being quiet, polite, not fidgety, not ADHD, whatever. So this is the problem. When there's somebody that doesn't fit the paradigm, you have all these tools, laws and drugs to combat this instead of common sense. Like, there's very little wiggle room for police, judges, lawmakers, teachers, business owners, employees, anybody to actually think outside the box. When something kind of contradicts the paradigm, most of the time it's a knee-jerk reaction and you get rid of it as quickly as possible. You don't sit there and discuss it. You don't try to fix the problem. You don't address anything. You just get rid of it. Sweep it under the rug. So if somebody's causing a disturbance by wearing something that's politically incorrect, you don't sit there and discuss whether or not it would be right to get rid of it or not, or what the ramifications are if you get rid of it versus not getting rid of it, pros and cons, a general discussion. No, you simply say either go and change, or we're leaving, or you'll be punished or whatever. But you try to end it as quickly as possible. The government does this all the time. Somebody says, I'm going to be sovereign. I want to exercise my Fifth Amendment right and not present any evidence against me on this traffic stop. So, your ball. And then the cop said, well, you can't do that. I can't exercise my Fifth. Nope. You either give me what I'm asking for, or I'll place you under arrest. And the next thing you know, that person's under arrest for exercising a constitutional right. You see the problem? The Constitution isn't respected. The police don't understand it. A simple way to comprehend what I'm saying is ask yourself, is the government there to be my public or my masters? They are public servants. Therefore, you are the master, they are the servant. Does the servant tell the master what to do? No. By and large, the servant's job is to, well, excuse me, sir, I believe, can I say something? Like, a respectful servant doesn't interrupt the master, doesn't command the master, doesn't railroad the master and take his rights away. Make sense? Our government has become our master. The governments of the world have become the masters of the people. We need to switch that back around. They need to be our servants. That's how the government was formed to be. That's the only way we can have a free and open government, is if they serve the people. But they don't. It's beyond saddening to think that this should be common knowledge, and it's not. For more research, look up Carl Miller. All his videos are great. Get a hold of your local politician's office and ask if they have like the Citizens Rule Book, pocket constitutions, or even just the regular constitutions. Get one. Read it. If you can, get a Black's Law Dictionary. Read it. Go to the law library. Start looking up some laws. Learn about Marbury versus Madison, 5 U.S. 137, 1803. Learn about other laws like Article 1, Section 9, no bills of attainder. A bill of attainder is a ticket. Anytime you get a ticket, it's illegitimate. It's unconstitutional. It's unlawful. It has no authority or obligation for you to obey it, and it purports to settle as if it never existed. It's inoperable as if it was no law. That's what the Supreme Court says about any tickets. So you can't get ticketed. They blatantly violate your rights, they steal your money, and then they expect you to sit there and take it. You don't have to. Look up Carl Miller, learn your Constitution, read your Bible. Remember why you're Americans. We are born here for a reason. We're here in this time for a reason. We can fix this if we so choose. And if we don't fix it, then what happens is our own demise. I mean, the opposite of freedom is slavery. So, your choice. Hawkeye 007, now the political pitbull. Like, share, comment, subscribe. Don't forget to hit the little bell icon. Until next time, this is Robert.